What if it was less about not drinking and more about being the woman you want to be? Wouldn't that feel better? Hi, my name is Holly Prevo, a former heavy drinker who started her own Soberish Uprising and everything in her life up-leveled. On the Soberish Uprising, we tell stories of finding freedom from alcohol on our own terms, making it our best power move to get the life we want. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. So today I am joined by my lovely friend Tommy calling in from Colorado. Hey, Tommy.
Well, hi, Holly. How you doing?
Good. This is so fun. I feel like I say that about all my guests, but this is fun. So we used to work together. We have kept in touch. We're in the coaching, life-changing space. And you were like, hey, I'm like starting my sober journey. And I said, do you want to come on my podcast? And you said, yes. And so here we are. So super fun.
That's totally it. Like in a nutshell.
We haven't even talked about it. So it's like what listeners are getting to is the real stuff. So yes, how are you currently?
So doing pretty well. I remember, so what really prompted me to reach out to you is I found this article that was talking about the increase of liver damage, especially in young women, especially since COVID. So of course, enough time has passed and enough data has been collected to be able to show this. So once I saw that article and I just sent it to you, I was like, this might be something that Holly could use. And then, that's what got the conversation going about not only just us catching up, but just casually dropping that, like, I've not had much of anything to drink since early November. And it like soberish was the right word. It's like, I really haven't had much of anything. I have a couple of experiences that we can talk about. But other than that, it's been pretty smooth sailing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sending me the article. I ended up doing kind of an Instagram reel on it.
Oh, nice.
Because also it talked about the marketing to women, which I'm really passionate about talking about, is mommy culture and happy hour and brunch and all that stuff. Because it talked about the marketing that is driven towards women drinking. And then we're seeing this uprise in liver and kidney damage and all that. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear it. So tell me, you're what, like around 12 weeks, like, kind of, you said November, you were saying, hey, I think I'm going to like quit drinking. If you don't mind sharing kind of where were you at with your drinking? Like what was going on that made you make that shift?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think I, like so many people, just developed a habit of bringing a little more alcohol into their lives during COVID, just exploring different wines and, what used to be, maybe a couple glasses on the weekend was like, well, it's so lovely. Might as well just have it with dinner every night. This is, there are all kinds of cultures that have a glass of wine with dinner every single night. And so it was just really easy to fall into that habit. And then weekends shifted maybe more from wine to also like ciders. I can't drink beer at all. I'll tell you a little bit about beer in a minute, but trying a variety of ciders. And it was like this thing to explore, right? And and learn about and try different things. And it just brought different literal flavors into life during a time when life felt very much smaller, much more constricted. So anyway, I discovered an enjoyment for old fashions, which I'd never had before. And then all of a sudden I'm making myself some of those on the weekends. So it just became a habit, just like it is for all of us, never got to any point where I was scared or worried or nervous about it all. But anyway, the thing was, with the exception of beer. So I will talk about beer. I said I would come back to that. I discovered this many, many, many years ago, that beer has a very, very negative effect on me. I will experience a very low, we'll call it depression for lack of a better word, for days. Even one beer would do that.
Really? I've never heard that. That's interesting. Any type of beer?
Any type of beer at all. Doesn't matter.
And even just one?
Even just one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's where, started exploring maybe wine or things like old fashions and margaritas and stuff. Like they didn't have nearly that kind of effect on me.
Yeah.
But I did notice that, in our work, intuition is very important. And I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that like access to my intuition wasn't as strong as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My overall energy just felt a little depleted
Yeah.
every day. It was very low grade and in
Yeah.
my opinion, not very noticeable. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's there's just something there. So anyway,
Yeah.
um, my wife said, I'm gonna try pausing on drinking for all of November
Mm-hmm.
2023. And I was like, I'm gonna try that too. Just for grins. And that was
Yeah.
part of her motivation, was she wanted to like reconnect and really amplify her
Mm-hmm.
intuition. So that's what I did. And the first month I thought was very interesting because I would get that, definitely that we'll call it a hunger or thirst, actually is the right word.
Literally.
Yeah, like I get that like every night. I was just so
Yeah.
used to that
Yeah.
drink
Yeah.
or two with dinner. I was
Mm-hmm.
just looking for it. And almost every day throughout November, I just had that sensation and that feeling.
Yeah.
And then once I got into December, I just noticed it started to fade away. Um,
Mm.
and I had discovered non-alcoholic beers, which is important going back to my previous story,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I had to give up beer completely. And even though I really hated beer uh, for a long time, I eventually liked it. And then of course it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I found a way back into it. And non-alcoholic beers are uh, really surprisingly tasty.
Yeah.
So I found a really good substitute that gives me all the
Mm-hmm.
clarity I want. It gives me
Yeah.
that something tasty with dinner that I like to have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, I mean, I feel no ill effects of it
Yeah.
in the mornings or anytime. It's great.
And that doesn't affect you at all. Not
Nope.
like, well, obviously, that's not like in depression. It wasn't anything. That is interesting. Well, it's funny. I hated alcohol beer. Like my wife at one point was like, if you drink 100 beers, I'll take you to Mexico. I'm like, well, fine, I'll do that. And because she's like, you have to develop a taste. Drink 100 beers over. It was like over a long time, not, months and months. Still hated it. But I love a non-alcoholic beer. It's interesting. Like I like some of the non-alcoholic ones. And so I don't know what that's about, but there's great options.
There really are. They're way more popular. They're far
Yeah.
more accessible in restaurants, I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's funny. It's funny you sort of had your person inspiring you to go through the like it phase of beer.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience in my early 20s. So I was a very good kid. Actually, didn't have anything at all to drink until
Uh-huh.
I was like a sneeze away from 21.
Okay.
Um, so like I have none of those high school stories or anything like that. But in those earlier days, my early 20s, same thing. My friends were like, you gotta acquire
Yeah.
your taste for beer if you want to enjoy it. And so they bought me a 40 ounce of Steel Reserve, which is
Ooh.
like skunk urine. It is the worst tasting stuff. It's so gross.
Mhm.
It's so bad. And so anyway, I'm like, oh, like I don't know if I had even a quarter of it.
Oh, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just so awful. So I was pretty turned off from the whole thing for a long, long time.
Mhm.
And then where I was working at the time, they had a company holiday party, and I went to that, and they had some beer that I'm like, oh, it's the worst stuff. I guess I'll try it.
Mm. Yeah.
And it was dark, it was bubbly, and smelled good. And I tried it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, this is not like that Steel Reserve skunk urine. Like this is a totally different flavor. And that's why I discovered things like, wheat beers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
darker beers,
Okay.
and things like and it was from a microbrewery. I'm like, oh, so this is what a good quality beer
Yeah.
tastes like. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's how I eventually made my way through it.
Do it. Yeah, it's interesting. I was with a lady the other day doing a podcast. I talked about I had to acquire my red wine too, right? Like it's interesting when you look back, you're like, and now that I think about it, I don't know what it was like for liquor, but I do remember in college doing like Malibu and Diet Dr. Pepper, like just
Mm.
like sweet. Like it would probably like send me to shock, but it's interesting how we have to develop taste for this. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. Well, so tell me about that month. You and your wife did it. You found that, what did you notice like in you talked about, did you see your intuition coming in clearly? Like what did you notice like physically and mentally?
Yeah, I think intuition came in I felt more connected. I just felt more present. I felt more clear. I felt more clean. I think is
Yeah.
a good word to describe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, I there would be, I would just wake up in the morning,
Mhm.
I don't know, and just feel a little more crisp and clean.
Yeah.
And even I think the other thing that I thought really shifted for me, which I was surprised by. So, of course, it's drinking and driving is
Mm.
such a such an important thing, an important message
Mhm.
that's been shared over and over and over again. And because of that, like even if I had, like, say we went out to dinner and I had a glass of wine with dinner, I'd still have just a little bit of that twinge of guilt
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
driving home.
Yeah.
Even though I felt, of course, totally fine, would have passed any test, like
Yeah.
was totally
Yeah.
fine. But that guilt was still a little bit in there, and that was a surprising shift for me.
Mm.
I could go to a restaurant, I could have my non-alcoholic beer,
Mm.
and I had absolutely no guilt,
Yeah.
and I felt completely comfortable on my drive home.
Mhm. Yeah. And I love what you talk about too, because I've talked about that a lot, is like it's that low grade guilt, that low grade anxiety, that low grade, like low energy that you kind of are just like, maybe I didn't sleep well, or maybe
Mhm.
it's just in a weird season, or maybe it's stress. And all of a sudden you're like, you quit it and that kind of goes away. And yes, you still feel stressed. And there are like, yes, those things still happen, but it's like, oh, this low grade anxiety that I was living with, I don't have that. I'm not an anxious person. I was just like sitting in that.
Totally, and I love that you brought up sleep. So that was
Mhm.
another, I think, negative side effect
Mhm.
for me, and I think this applies to a lot of people. I noticed a very consistent trend that anytime I had, uh, sometimes with one drink, almost always with two,
Mhm.
I would wake up at about 2:30 in the morning
Mm.
every time.
Mhm.
Like it was just there's something that just triggered in me, and it would
Yeah.
disrupt my sleep. Which I think
Mhm.
also contributed to my lower energy. So back to your question, going through that month, I felt like I was able to sleep better through the night and not have
Mm.
that almost predictable
Yeah. Yeah.
middle of the night wake up.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that makes total sense. And so, you finished November, and
Yep.
then what were your thoughts, going into December? Did you have a plan, or what was that decision like for you?
Well, so this is where the sober-ish comes in.
Mhm.
The uh so I've become a Formula One fan, as I think
Okay.
some folks have, if they watch Drive to Survive on Netflix. I'm one of those people that totally got converted into enjoying and loving the sport. So the last race of the Formula One season in 2023 was in November, and
Okay.
right at the end of November, like I think it was the last Sunday of November. So we had an F1 party at our house, and it was in the morning, um, because the time of the race was much later in the day in the home country they were in. But anyway, so we did a bunch of mimosas and like champagne
Mm.
and this
Mhm.
whole thing. And so I was like, I had gone through my month.
Yeah.
I It felt like an accomplishment.
Mhm.
Let's celebrate. And so just
Yeah.
had several mimosas in our home, enjoying
Mhm.
the race, and had such a good time. And then I just had a lot of those old sensations come up again, where it was,
Mm.
I, I'm not having, like, it just doesn't feel good. Like the 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 relief and the benefit sensation that I think pulls all of us to
Mm.
try
Yeah.
to spend time drinking, right, is, it's a numbing agent. And so
Mhm.
that length of time where you're in that more blissful state had
Mhm.
been diminishing and diminished and diminished and diminished. And then, even then, with all those mimosas, it was like it, lasted maybe a couple hours, a few hours, and then
Yeah.
I was sort of back to just being low and dragging in energy. So
Mm.
then, to answer your question, getting into December, it was, uh, that for me just solidified my commitment to how
Mm.
much more I enjoy the
Yeah.
experience of, like, my body and living just without it. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't enhance anymore. And
Oh.
so, December, I think maybe I had a glass of wine, maybe two
Mhm.
throughout the entire month.
That's
In
amazing.
January, I haven't had anything at all.
Yeah. Oh, I think thank you for sharing that, because I think that is, in the program I have, we do like, I think it's like 60 days sober,
Mm,
57, because it's like there's something about getting it totally out of your system, and alcohol stays in our system for weeks, like even, so like getting it out, feeling what it feels like to feel really good and not have it. And then I love this idea of like, you tried it and you were like, oh, no, that's not it. And maybe it's, maybe it's not 4 mimosas, maybe one wine is fine, but it's like that playing with it, like what doesn't disrupt your system.
Yeah.
And I don't, because I didn't know what that felt like until I started mine, right? I hadn't gone more than 5 days probably without drinking at some point.
Yeah. And that's why I'm glad we're exploring this. Like what is the experience like? And the only way to really do that is to, commit yourself to experiencing it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it was this, try it for a month, or like I said, try it 5 days, or, just start to play with it. What affects you, what doesn't affect you as much. And, and that's what's made it really easy for me to be, especially in January, which a lot of stressful family things have happened in this month. And that was the only time, kind of at the peak of that stress, was the only time that those thoughts from November popped back up. Those thoughts of maybe a drink with dinner tonight I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I think because it's become the habit, because I appreciate what the experience is like so much more without any of it in my system. I was able to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like there's been a lot of stress this month. And just remember how good you feel when non-alcoholic beer is the closest thing you get. And it's such an option. Like I said, it's available in restaurants and so many varieties. So it's, I've just been very grateful to make this change. I'm prioritizing physical well-being and exercise, and I have been for months, and this really helped with that. I really appreciate this place I've come to, and I'm really thankful for my mind and my body and my heart and my intuition and my gut, because they came in and supported me in this decision and being like, you are okay without this. In fact, you're better without it.
Just trust us. Just give it a shot.
Trust us. Totally.
Just trust us. I'm always like, give us a non-alcoholic shot. Well, I'm talking about, this like hard time, that you're going through, or, happened. Maybe what was your like thought process on saying no? Because I mean, you're a phenomenal coach. You're so good at what you do. I'd love to hear, like, was there a lot of self-coaching, a lot of self-talk during that moment, or what made you? Because you could have easily said, I'm going to have a couple old fashions because it's been a shit month. Like what was that for you? Do you remember looking back?
That's a great question. You know what it was? I think it was having gone through November, where I had that sensation like every day for a month, and noticed that it went away in December. That was it. That was
interesting.
It's emotional for me. That was totally it. It was, I've had these thoughts before, and I noticed that if I simply notice them and let them pass, and if I really want something, I can open a non-alcoholic beer that I have in the fridge. Then I know I'm going to get back to that place where it's like, I don't need it, and I like it. I like life without it. So I just trusted, honestly, that the same pattern would repeat itself, that it would pass, and enjoy it, and appreciate that that's what happened.
Yeah. And like, thank you for sharing that piece of like, it's happened before and it didn't last. Nothing, this is not forever. And also, like you said, how good am I going to feel tomorrow when I sleep well and I wake up rested to handle, like, cause I'm always like, sobriety doesn't solve everything. Like stuff still happens, but like, you're more able to like process it and deal with it. And like, in a way that you, like, for me, at least, I don't regret if I was drinking, then I may not show up to my best self for hard situations. Right now, it's like, I am totally clear and intuition's good. Everything's good. And whatever decision I make and the things that I do and say are aligned, and they're not this hazy booze hanging over me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a wonderful point. And I think even going back to sleep and showing up as your best self, some of the stress got to the point where sleep itself has been tricky for me. And I
Mm.
was like, the last thing I want is to make that even worse
Yes.
by
Yes.
having something like
Yeah.
sleeping through the night tonight, based on how I've slept the last 2, 3, 4, 5 nights, like, which
Mhm.
is it's got to happen. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
such a sleep hoarder. Like, I gotta have my sleep. I love my
Yeah.
sleep. Sleeping's the best. Um, so I'm like, I have to sleep this tonight, and there's no way I would mess that up
Yeah.
by having a drink and
Mhm.
having so little relief of quote air quote relief of my
Mhm.
stress,
Mhm.
uh, to sacrifice sleep and then not feel as clear tomorrow. Like you just do the math, and it's more of a no brainer
Mm.
these
Yeah.
days for
Yeah.
me.
I, and then that's what I think what your experience, what that you're finding data, right? You're like, no, 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 no. Like the math that I wouldn't, if I got sick off of eating gluten, I would not do that anymore. Or if I did, I would be very intentional about what I chose to treat myself with and knowing what's going to happen. But it's like the math doesn't math. It just
Totally. I
doesn't.
mean, that's what made it easy for me to say
Hmm.
no to alcoholic beer. It's like, I mean, I tested
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
really tested it.
You're like, maybe
And
this will be the one.
maybe this would be the one. And I was like, no, it is reliable. It
Yeah.
is consistent. This is
Yeah.
scientific. No one knows what it is or can explain it, but
Hmm.
why that and not wine or even
Yeah,
hard
that is
alcohol
interesting.
doesn't do the same thing at all.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just had the experience and I had the data, and I'm like, totally, like you said, like if you eat something and it makes you sick, you're probably just not going to eat it anymore. It makes no sense to keep eating it.
Like if I woke up after I ate it and then, because for me, I wake up at 2:30 in the morning and my heart would be racing. And again,
Yes.
it was sometimes like 2 glasses of wine. I'm not talking, I mean, yes, there were those that I would have a lot more, but it was like that. And then it's like, and then I would spend the next 2 hours just beating myself up,
Yeah.
right? Like, why'd you do that? You said you were going to do it. Now you're going to feel bad. And it's like, this is not worth it anymore. And I'm like you for
Yeah.
sleep. Yeah. Well, tell me, so
Yeah.
I'm really curious.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I'm curious about these December dates because, like, I love that. I think I had 3 glasses of wine in January or December. So that was my kind of goal. But like, I'm curious, those 2 glasses, how were those for you? Like, how did they
Um,
impact your body, your spirit? How were those?
yeah. So I mean, so it's the holiday season, right?
Totally.
We're hosting um Christmas Eve at our house, had my parents
Mm-hmm.
over, and that's where I had, I think, 1 or 2 glasses of wine.
Mm-hmm.
What I noticed is that we were talking about this earlier, that sort of numbing, that sort of relief, that sort of drop of the stress,
Mm-hmm.
that easier access to more, joy and happiness and liberation.
Mm-hmm.
All those great things that is what inspires so many of us to partake in drinking. Like it never really got there. It like curbed it a little bit,
Mm.
but it wasn't very pronounced.
Okay.
And what was there didn't last very long at all.
Mm.
So I was surprised by that. I thought the opposite would happen. Actually, I thought that I would be more sensitive to it
Mm-hmm.
after I had been off of it for, at that point, almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Um, so then it just reinforced everything again. It's
Mm.
it's like,
Yeah.
so I mean, when it comes back into my body, there's so little benefit and way
Mm.
more cost.
Yeah. So do you have any regret over those 2 drinks? Like, did you wake up
No,
feeling bad but
no,
it just wasn't worth the,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it just wasn't worth it. Like, I felt proud of being,
Mhm.
of taking this adventure, this
Yeah,
what was
yeah.
supposed to be a month long adventure that's now a legit lifestyle change for me. Um,
Mhm.
I was just conversing with those close to me the other day. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm just so done
Mm.
drinking. I
Yeah.
anything, and because the alternatives are accessible, meaning like non-alcoholic beer or other things that are
Mhm.
available. Trying some non-alcoholic tequila, developed by a Formula One racing driver, Lewis
Oh,
Hamilton.
very cool. Okay.
It's a very interesting flavor. It doesn't really taste like tequila, but there is something interesting about it. And so I made an old fashioned with one of those,
Well,
and so that was enjoyable, right?
yeah.
And so anyway, like, so many of these alternatives just exist out there, and yeah, fundamentally, at the end of the day, I just I like who I am. I like what I'm able
Mm,
to accomplish. There's something so great about having that sense of self-discipline, but it's not a
mm,
like a beat yourself up kind of
yeah.
self-discipline. It's a very encouraging, you've got this.
Mm,
It's committing yourself to it, just like
yeah.
exercise or working out. It can be a punishment for your body, and it's like,
Yeah.
do it and work harder and go, 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 go. Or it could be like, man, moving my body just is freaking awesome. Like,
Mm,
I love
mhm.
it. And
Yeah.
it's very similar
Yeah.
with not drinking. Not drinking is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
so
just
good.
feel so much better.
Yeah.
Like, how can I not do this?
Yeah. I love it. The discipline, I almost like it's the best self-care I can do for myself and self-love. Like that's all this is when I'm not putting this stuff into my body. And it was, I think, I don't want to butcher this. It was Sabrina or Venus Williams talked about, there's a quote like discipline being the way to freedom.
Mm.
And I loved that. Like this discipline of that like leads to so much freedom. And I think that really can be people's soberest journey is like there's a discipline of like what you put, only putting good things into your body, whatever that looks like for you. And like the freedom that opens up.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, discipline doesn't have to be a rigorous, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Right.
whip yourself kind of
Mm-hmm.
experience. It can be a curious wonderment of like, what can I
Mm,
do? What's possible here? That's
yeah.
what I know we're
Yeah.
not like veering
Oh,
just a bit, but
perfect.
that's what fascinating about, say, the Wim Hof method. So that's
Mm-hmm.
deep breathing with a retention where you're actually holding your breath with no oxygen in your lungs for minutes. That fascinated me, that I could learn this
Mm-hmm.
system that thousands, maybe millions of people have been able to do. And the body can do something that is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's very similar here. It's
Yeah.
like, can the body shift its thirst, its habit, its
Mm,
craving to something
yeah.
different, or alleviate it altogether.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the part that really fascinated me and
Mm-hmm.
keeps me committed, um, because I just find that so interesting.
Yeah. Oh, and like staying to your point, thank you. That's a great, that's a phenomenal insight. Like staying curious to all of it too, right? Like, can I shift this? I don't know. I'm like willing to try and see like if I can. Or what does that look like?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
and sometimes it is just it's so funny. Sometimes it is literally I'm like, I don't think people realize it. Just get yourself a nice cocktail glass, get some cute ice, not cute ice, like a pub ice, right? Like make yourself go buy the stuff, make yourself a mocktail. And it's like sometimes just that act, like it like there are times that I found a really good tequila. I actually really like it. I'll have to send it to you. Um like I'll drink it and I like for a split second it tricks my mind that I'm like, is this have alcohol in it? And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like I made it myself, but it's like sometimes just that act is something different and you can have it at a table with friends drinking or they're not drinking. It's just like the fellowship of and like something that's not just a bottled water. It's like if you'll try it and like the non-alcoholic beers, like they taste like beer. So just it's like just trying that and staying curious to what that can open up.
Yeah, and I have a sneaking suspicion that even the non-alcoholic beer is a transition. I can imagine one day that even that I
Mm,
might
yeah.
not be as, oh, there goes,
Oh, there's a buggy.
there's my
We got
puppy.
doggies. We're dog
Uh,
friendly here.
he's
No, totally. That may be something that like isn't what you need. Gotta hush
okay.
in the
Sorry
dog
about
right now.
that.
No, you're fine.
So yeah, I just have a sneaking suspicion. I don't
That's
know if that's true or not.
interesting. Yeah.
But the other thing I found, like you sharing that story reminded me was, I think it would have been easy for me to feel embarrassed. And I think maybe I did at first,
Mm,
ordering non-alcoholic beer when I'm hanging out with some other friends who are not
hmm hmm
drinking non-alcoholic beer or drinking regular beer. But once I got over that fear by just doing it, and I was like, they're all going to order what they're going to order. I can't drink beer
hmm
anyway.
Yeah.
So same. Instead of maybe getting my soda water and lime, which is another
Yeah.
great one if you're looking for something that looks interesting but is a mocktail as well. Just soda water with lime or lime juice in it. It's great.
hmm
Um, and I just kind of sat there and was like, "Do you have any non-alcoholic beers?" Like, "Yeah, we've got this one." I was like, "Great, I'll try it." And what
hmm
was interesting about that is my friend sitting next to me, the next beer he ordered was a non-alcoholic Heineken. So
hmm
and that was an important insight for me, because that taught me that, you know what, I bet you that more people are
hmm
interested in drinking less alcohol,
Yeah.
but maybe feel a little bit of that social pressure to just keep
Mm-hmm.
it going. And
Yeah.
if just one person breaks that trend amongst this group, you never know how many other people might be inspired to
Yeah.
try something different.
Yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That right there is the chef's kiss of it, because I think so many people are craving non-alcoholic events, non-alcoholic options, but when you're used to it, I was at a retreat a couple weeks ago, and they actually had they had a 8.5 by 11 picture of it mocktail, and they did oh my gosh, I can't think of it, the one with the lime and it doesn't matter. It's gonna make me crazy now. It's like, anyways, but they had it and it was really cool. Like, I got it. I saw a lot of other women drinking it. I saw women get a glass of wine and then have that second. So it's like, I think that somebody just has to go first and be like, no, I am out here having a great time with my soda water, my non-alcoholic beer. So that's really cool that your friend saw that and was like, hey, all I need is one. Now I'm going to shift to something that I can go home and feel really good about my night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Some of us got to go first. Some of us got to go first and be like, hey, this life is really good and you don't feel terrible tomorrow. And you don't have to Uber home. You can drive home. You don't have to pay for Uber today.
Exactly. Like all those benefits just start to come to the surface.
Well, I'd love to hear, you had said, you told your friends, like, I don't think I'm going to drink anymore. What is your kind of soberish plan going into the rest of the year?
Yeah, I just feel it in my bones, like so committed. I'm just done. I'm just done with alcohol in all of its shapes and forms. It's funny that I do feel emotional saying that because I don't know. It always seemed like such a tiny part of my life, but yeah, it just feels so rewarding to commit to myself, like you said, to love yourself, to show that kind of honor to my body, to my mind, to my heart, and to my soul, of which alcohol diminishes all of them, even just a tiny bit. But still, it's like there's something that just aligns for me, and it's like a thank you. It's like my whole body is just saying, "Thanks for doing that."
That gives me like the chills. Yeah, like, thanks for doing that. Like, it's like you take out one thing of your life and like everything gets added on, right? Like, or increases. So it's like, and I love that feeling of like your body just being like, thanks. Like, even if it is a little thing, like, right. That's why I'm really big on like, I can't define somebody's problem. Like, all our drinking, if it's causing any type of disruption in your life, like, you have to decide if that's something you want to live with.
Yeah.
Well, and I know advice is always hard to give, especially as trained coaches, but curious, in your kind of journey, if somebody was listening and they're in this place of like, not really, like, I'm sober curious, or maybe share one or two things that worked for you, or any advice you would have for somebody listening.
Yeah, and what's great is I think we've covered it. It's two things. One, allow yourself to commit to a small period of time that feels like a stretch, but also doable, like a good middle ground. So if 6 months sounds like, damn, that's a long time, try a month. If a week is like, that's going to be so easy, I can't, like, no problem. Then make it 2 weeks, or make it 3 weeks, or make it 4 weeks. So find a length of time that you're willing to commit to that feels like a good stretch that's doable. And then I'm a big fan of not cold turkey. I'm a big fan of replacing habits with something else. So that's why I immediately went to trying non-alcoholic beers, so that I could still have that. I'm replacing the habit. I'm not dropping the habit. I think those two things make a big difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for kind of reiterating that we talked about earlier. And last but not least, what does soberish mean to you?
It means I always have a choice. I always have a choice about what I can consume and put into my body. And it's not hard. It's not rigid. It's not dogmatic. It's not anyone else's rule. It's my choice, and it's my rule. And I get to play the game how I want to.
Yeah.
And with all that empowerment, it's easy to choose no more drinking for me.
Yeah.
And that's soberish.
Yeah. Thank you, Tommy. I'm so glad to catch up with you. I will put how to get a hold of you in the show notes. You do a lot of great work out in this world. So thank you so much for sharing your newly soberish story, and we'll have to do a catch up in a couple months. Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you loved this episode, which we hope you did, please leave us a review or share with a friend. And if you're ready to explore your own version of soberish, head over to soberishuprising.com. And remember, everything you want is on the other side of saying no to that drink.